Alright, so the question was asked, what happens when the magnets interact with each other? The two set of B magnets are based on my ideal that like charges attract and opposite charges repel, and the two set of A magnets are based on the idea that opposites attract and like charges repel. The question was suggested, what happens when you combine the two? Do you still get the same result? The answer to that question is no. When you combine the two, you get a funny result. The basic fundamental understanding that I get is it drops back down to opposites attracting and like charges repelling. So what does that mean? Does that mean that my observation is flawed? No, it doesn't. The reason why this is so is because the magnets themselves have an attractive force and a repulsive force. They do not have names. They either attract or they repel. It is because human beings measure things that we assign a magnetic field a class. The inverse rule allows any magnet to be opposites attracting or opposites repelling. The inverse rule allows for like charges to attract and opposite charges to repel. And the inverse rule also allows for like charges to repel and opposite charges to attract. As a human being, what I cannot do is I cannot say like charges attract and then go on to say opposite charges attract. I can't do that. I do not have that power. I'm not a god, and I have to deal with the limitations of my reality. Therefore, these two repulsive magnets, I cannot measure them and say that opposites will attract. It's impossible. It just doesn't happen. No amount of me saying like charges will attract will make that so. It can't happen. Once you assign the value of a magnet, the value is absolute. It is the ability to assign magnets a value which gives rise to my theory of the inverse rule, not the actual labeling of the magnets. If you assign a magnet a value and you use that value to assign an atomic particle value, then the atomic particle is bound by the inverse rule you choose to use. That is to say that if opposites attract and you use the positive state of an opposite attracting magnet to define the value of an electron, then the value of the electron will be based on an inverse rule of opposites attracting. The flip side of that same coin is if you use the theory that like charges attract and you assign that value to a proton, then you recognize immediately that all protons inside of an atomic particle, inside of an atomic atom, will attract to each other based on the inverse rule. You cannot create or destroy the science that's already been invented. You can't violate the laws of physics by forcing your will upon them. You can only describe the interactions as you see them. And as a human being, you can describe the interactions incorrectly. I may be wrong, I may not be wrong. I'm just showing the observation that I'm seeing. That's what good scientists do. This is Paul Emerson, and that is my opinion. That is my 2 cents.